What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Music in the Minor League. This week, we're joined by Houston area singer-songwriter David Fahl. David ended up in the Houston area after moving down from Minnesota. He's been a fixture of our scene for well over a decade, I think multiple decades now, since the 90s. We've seen his name around for a long time. Finally got to meet him a few months ago and got to know him and hear his songs, man. They're really great stuff. We'd heard his name mentioned by friends of ours. We've heard people even cover his songs before we met him. So, man, David's been around a while. So really, David's been making great music for a while around town, and we're grateful to be able to finally hear it and get to know it. His 2023 record, Graduation Day, was named a top local record of the year by the Houston Chronicle. He has a new EP out called Too Late to Go Home Early, which is recorded at the Starlight Theater in Terlingua. His wife Allison plays piano on that one, so be sure to check out his stuff and you'll be thankful you did. Let's get through some housekeeping real quick now. First off, if you like the podcast, please share it with a friend, put it out on your socials. It's getting harder and harder to beat that algorithm, so anything you can do to help spread the word, we appreciate it. Every time some people share things, we see the listenership jump up, and we appreciate it. We're not here to make money. We're here to spread the word about music that we enjoy and help you find some new things you might enjoy. 2, if you want to catch David around town, on July 17th, he'll be over at Kojak's. That will be with Opie Hendricks. He'll be doing a song swap. That's going to be a great one. And then on July 18th, him and Wendy Elizabeth Jones will be playing down in Galveston at Indy's Coffee House. And then I'm sure there'll be stuff popping up through the interview. He talks about residencies and things. Keep an eye out and check it out. If you want to see Brightwire, we got one more big tour. Things have kind of changed on our end. Kim has a job again, so we're going to be unfortunately slowing down our touring until she gets leave, which will probably be sometime in mid-2026. So what we got coming up? Well, let's tell you. This Saturday, we'll be down at Galveston doing a duo show at Mod Coffee House. Then we're prepping up before we hit the road for our last tour for a while. We'll be in July 10th. We'll be in Dallas, Texas at Opening Bell Coffee. That'll be at 9 p.m. after the NSAI meeting. On July 11th, we'll be in Amarillo, Texas at the 806. 9 p.m. start on that one. On July 12th, we'll be in Loveland, Colorado at Backyard Tap. That'll be a 6 p.m. start on that one. On the 13th of July, we'll be at City Star Brewing in Berthoud, Colorado. I'm guessing that's the right pronunciation. Don't quote me on that. But that one's going to be a 5 o'clock start. On July 14th, we'll be at Kirby's Beer Store in Wichita, Kansas. Kirby's is always the best. And once again, we'll be playing with Anna Joe Banjo, and Absolute Sway will be playing and having their open jam after the show. On July 19th, we'll be down at Stingery Restaurant in my hometown of Crystal Beach, Texas. We'll be opening for Little Outfit. Then on July 20th, we'll be over at Dan Electro's with Lee Baines. He'll be doing a solo set. If you never heard Lee Baines at Third and the Glory Fires, you're missing out. Check him out. Come to that show. It's going to be huge. It's going to be us, Lee, and Grifters and Shills. It's going to be a killer show. And we're going to be doing full band on that one. And then July 25th will be where we really kind of shut it down for a while. We're going to be at the Old Quarter Acoustic Cafe doing an anything but acoustic show. We're going to be going full band with Little Outfit acoustic duo or trio opening for us. So that's going to be a cool show. That one starts at 8:30. Oh, and the Dan Electro show starts at 2 p.m. It's an early matinee show. So don't forget about that. And that'll be it for a while, man. Then we're just going to shut it down. I think we're going to do one quick run in August out to Salina, Kansas to play Big Booty Trudy's, and then we're done for a while, man. We're going to finish working on this new record. We got a lot done. We still don't have a track listing or name for the record, but it's coming along. Anyway, no one cares about that. Let's cut through that, and we're going to get to the title track from David's 2023 critically acclaimed album, Graduation Day. Hope you dig it. We'll see you on the other side. Later.
So hard, but you don't get anywhere. You're learning so much, you don't really care to know. And you're looking through me now with that educated stare. I guess it's time graduation day. Something about us always seems so temporary. We've been skipping on bread, splurging on cherries. I gotta admit that something still seems scary about graduation day. Nothing lasts forever, we knew it all along. We're just checking out the damage now, it's time to move along. Don't want to make the next move, afraid we might get it wrong. Nobody planned it this way, but you gotta go somewhere on graduation day. Nothing's the same after graduation day. I taught you everything I knew, and you'll learn something else. The stories the hero lives and their stories he tells. There's treasures he keeps and treasures he sells to pay for the party on graduation day. Who's teaching who? That's always in doubt. There's answers we whisper and questions we shout. And you'll go on with me, or you'll go on without. And it won't be the same after graduation day. Nothing lasts forever, that's saying nothing new. We got a whole lot to see now, we got a whole lot to do. And it's been happening to me just like it's been happening to you. Nobody planned it this way, but you gotta go somewhere on graduation day. Nothing's the same after graduation day.
All right, y'all, welcome to another episode of Music in the Minor League. Today we are here with David Fahl, who honestly is a name I've been seeing around Houston as long as I've lived in Houston. Folk singer-songwriter, been doing stuff around Houston for a long time. Glad to sit down and talk to him. We met him about 6-8 months ago at the Song Circle Houston, the Song Circle put on by Song Circle Houston.
That'll work.
Hell's like, we're going to hit start and it's going to sound real professional. It's like, we were at the Song Circle from the Song Circle. But yeah, man, we're good. Thanks for coming in and talking to us.
I was just going to say, when we did meet him at the Song Circle, I struck up a conversation. I'm like, man, I really like your songs. So we're glad to talk to you.
Well, thank you. Anytime people do, I recognize your intelligence and taste.
Impeccable.
Like, there's a smart person right there.
I like
Yeah.
this guy.
No, but I really liked your stuff too. I remember that too because it was the first time it was like I couldn't hear you, couldn't hear Kim because
Yeah.
Sam was between the two of you and
Yep.
between his guitar and voice.
His darn
It was-
guitar.
And Kim's like,
It's not true. I project. It's just difficult sometimes.
you work the microphone.
Yeah. No, but it was, your stuff was good. And I've been seeing it, like I had been seeing you guys around too a long time.
Yeah.
And I was amazed, almost like I was talking about listening to the Charles Bryant thing on the way over here. And he was talking about that, where you guys met him at that house concert that somebody was doing in Pasadena.
Yeah, almost
Oh, yeah.
Austin,
And
yeah.
I hadn't even heard of that scene at all. I mean, and I was like, there's a lot going on in this town that doesn't run into each other.
It's a big city.
It is really shocking, yeah, when you go to some new venue and you're like, people who hang around there, you're like, oh man, like I didn't know any of these people.
Yeah.
And they're all killer. You know, you go into one thing, it just takes one new place to visit that opens up a whole new world to folks. Of course, it's also what's Houston at like 4 million people right now. So,
Yeah.
Getting close, yeah.
yeah, so I guess there's a lot of stuff happening, but a lot of people who are like doing really good too. That's what's trippy. It's like, well, how have I not heard of this person? You know, but I mean, we've heard, what was it? Wendy Elizabeth Jones, we heard her cover a couple of your songs over time.
Oh yeah, well we've written a couple with her, or she and I've written a couple together, and I've known her since she started doing music in Houston back in mid-aughts, I think it was.
Yeah.
She showed up at a last concert, and Allison, my wife, Allison played piano with her in an all-girl band for a while.
Oh, cool.
Which Atomic Nightingales.
Ooh,
Oh, right on.
good name.
Yeah, it was a great name. It was a great band, and they and then since then, Allison has pretty much played with her anytime that Wendy's had something going. And then recently, her regular guitar player David O'Day moved up to Crockett, Texas, which is a 2-hour drive. So I have become by default her guitar player. We had done I done some shows with her, like playing acoustic guitar, and when we did the shows out in Terlingua last year, a couple times we went out there.
I think we saw you both play with her once at Dan Electro's.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I ran into somebody else the other day that had recognized me from that too. But yeah, she's a sweetheart.
That's awesome.
Well, like we start every episode, we're going to run into it. What got you started? I mean, how long you been playing? What got you into playing music?
Well, I got my mission in life, as I'd understood it as a kid, was actually to be a poet. But I had kind of I dropped out of school after my junior year in college. We kind of agreed we didn't really want to be together anymore. And
You broke up with
I broke up with the educational system.
It's not you, it's me.
And then I ended up. And this sounds, I was in a situation, so I worked construction and worked at construction up in Minnesota and lots of union jobs. And it gets cold in the winter and they lay everybody off and you get unemployment. So fun, I get money coming in and I don't have to do anything. And I moved up to St. Paul and I was like, I had at least 3 or 4 months. I'll just start to write. And I sat down at a typewriter with empty blank pieces of paper and I was like, I don't know anything. I mean, literally, I got nothing to say. And I figured, well, I better do something, and ended up getting married, getting a job. I wanted to have my wife's family, or that Celia's family lived out in Pennsylvania. I hadn't met him yet. I figured, well, by the time I meet her father, I ought to have a decent job. So I started looking around and ended up with a microfilm job that led me into IT. So I spent 50 years doing computer programming and systems analysis and all of that kind of stuff to support myself. I got into music. I'd done a little bit of music. I mean, obviously was a fan, hardcore fan forever, but I was in my mid-30s and I actually got a poem published in a computer magazine.
Nice.
It was this Datamation. It was a story. It was a poem about where there was a project that died. A project that we'd all been working on or trying to get ready to go, and the head of the department called everybody into a meeting one day and announced that the project had been canceled. And I was watching everybody around the room kind of start to react to how we were going to deal with this, because obviously some jobs were going to be gone, people who had put some time into it. And so I had this notion of this corpse of this thing sitting on the table, and I always had my notepad with me. We used paper and pencil back in those days, and had my little notepad with me. I wrote out this little sketch, and I ended up sending that poem into this computer magazine. And a couple of weeks, it got published, and a couple months later, one of the guys that I worked with had a little garage band thing going, and he and his buddies were in the early days of 4-track recording, and they had been writing some songs, but they didn't have any lyrics, and he figured I might be able to help with that, so I did on a couple of songs, and then I ended up singing the lyrics for them as well. and got the idea of writing song lyrics, and quickly found out that there is not a band in town that was interested in song lyrics from some guy who's walking up to him at a bar who says, I can write song lyrics. You want, yeah, no. So I started, I had an old guitar. I picked it out of the closet, started trying to learn how to play. And
you're in your 30s at this point?
I was mid-30s, yeah.
Okay.
And it was easier to learn how to play then because electronic tuners had been invented.
Yes.
And instead of spending half of my practice time tuning, I could tune and then practice. And
True.
That I have to say that made a big difference. I'm not Nowadays, when I talk to people and they ask me if I'm a musician, I say, no, I'm a songwriter. And, it's because after being around people who can really play, and, I manage, and I'm not, no longer embarrassing, but I was actually out open mics, singing and playing before I knew how to do either of those things with songs that I'd written.
Been there, man. Been there.
Yeah.
That's a great start.
I do the same thing. I consider myself way more of a songwriter. Like I can use the tool to play music, but it's not like I'm not going to shred or do anything amazing.
Right. And it's like I'm not the best musician. I'm not the best musician in my own house.
Yeah.
Allison plays piano much with than I do anything with a guitar. But and I've noticed. I was thinking about this just recently because I just got back from the Fahl Folk Festival, which ended weekend before last, and listening to people, the songwriters there are people who have amazing guitar chops, and they write songs that show those amazing guitar chops. And there are people who sing really, really well, who have amazing voices and incredible range, and they can, sustain notes and do these little ooey things going up and down for 15 bars that just throw. I can't do that either. So it's the best I got is words, and sometimes I get a groove, and I find different chord patterns that try to find sets of chord changes that haven't quite been heard before. But
no, that's it. And it's just find your own place to exist. And I think it's important to have the people who make a lot of the songs. That's always figure people can always decorate them different ways. Just, here's the foundation, here's the song, and just see what happens.
But I played with a lot of different people. I ended up Public News magazine used to have that. I remember Public News.
Oh yeah.
So they had the classifieds in back where people were looking for people to play with and stuff. I was always either putting ads in there or looking them up, and I played a long time with a country rock and roll band. Actually, we had a garage band that played with a couple of guys from Wayside Avenue, which is near where I live now.
Yeah,
we're near Wayside and Greg's, and it's part of the reason I live there now is because I remember the neighborhood from when I was playing with those guys back in in the early '90s, and it's a cool neighborhood. It's another friend introduced me to this old blues singer, Pops Overstreet. This was back in late '80s, early '90s, and he was one of those. I used to joke he's from the wrong part of Mississippi because he's from the Northeast instead of the Delta.
Yeah,
he's over the hill country. DeKalb, I think Mississippi is where he grew up.
Okay, yeah.
But he roundabout way got to Houston through Detroit and West Virginia, and ended up here. And he and I played together for a long time, and I was just learning how to play lead guitar at that point. And it was really nice because he always played in E, so I only had one scale I had to learn. And,
nice.
And he hardly ever used even changed that chord. And so it was a matter of he had to listen real hard because you never knew what he was doing, and then try to find something to play with him so that the two songs in a row didn't sound exactly the same.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a challenge that way, just working with that.
That was a fun challenge, though.
Oh, yeah. And we got, it's amazing because I learned, nobody who listens to me, I think now thinks, oh, this guy's a blues guy. People don't hear it, but there's an awful lot I learned from him about how you tell a story and the way that the stories come out. And I would hear some of the songs that he did with the same title, but having heard the versions from the recordings that he'd learned them from, and obviously he pared them down quite a bit, but he kept different essential parts of it. And if he was if we were doing a song and we had a band that was going and people were into it, that song might end up being 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
If it was working in the room, and if it didn't, it would stop in a minute and a half. If he didn't like the way I was doing what I was doing with it, or the rest of the band, but. And a lot of the stuff that I learned from him, I didn't realize I'd learn until 10, 15, 20 years later. And I'd pick up somebody like, R.L. Burnside, somebody like that. And it's oh, okay, this is what he was doing,
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, it does not surprise me at all that you wanted to be a poet, that was your first, inclination. Because when I listen to you sing, like, you paint a story. Like, it's very visual.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. I do. Sometimes I feel like I get hung up on this storytelling thing. It's like every story's got to have a beginning, middle, and end. And I have a philosophical problem with that because nothing in life has very few things in life have beginning, middles, and ends. Most of the time we live in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And it's, but to try to tell that stories, it's not a story if it's just all in the middle. But, unless it's like Finnegan's Wake, and then you can't understand it anyway. But
But it really is that kind of like, you think about like a lot of the old popular Ode to Billy Joe, things like that kind of don't have a very well resolved end of the story. And those are the ones that seem to stick with people the longest. I think it's that whole like, what happened? What
makes you wonder.
It makes everyone be able to go like, hey, what? I remember that, what was it? The Raconteurs on that, what was it? Second album had the song that ended like the Milkman and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And then it just kind of ends without resolving the story. Like the story just kind of like, if you want to find out what happened, you have to ask him. And it's just like, so people listen to it over and over. It's like, man, I want to figure out the clues. And then it gets stuck as like an earworm.
Right. So it's like, Jack White, if you're listening to this, can we get some closure, please?
yeah.
That's a long way of saying that, yeah, like David, I'm bad about like, well, no, here's how it ends. Because I don't want to leave people caught up, like wondering.
Well, I kind of like that when something does end that way. But it's, I'm seriously into like studying storytelling just as a thing on its own. And it's, this is part of what people expect. And while it's always fun to like mess with people's expectations, it's almost like it requires some kind of, if not a resolution, at least what the possibilities might be, but it's like, I don't know. It's like ending the tragedy before the guy dies, or
right, exactly,
or ending the comedy before anybody gets married, or you just leave something hanging there. I'm trying to think of examples where that happens, and I can't. My mind is drawing a blank. I know I've seen it, but
those are the ones that stick with you, though. To me, anyway.
It's like you don't want to leave people. I mean, while it's funny, it's kind of like how Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where the movie just ends abruptly.
I know, man. To this day, it's kind
of like you don't want that. Where it's just like for those of you listening who haven't seen it, it's like just there's no spoilers. The movie's 50 years old.
Get some culture in your life and go watch it, even if we spoiled it for you.
Where like the police just show up and break up everything. Yes. And it's like the movie's over.
So it's basically just a cosplay, is what it is.
Yeah, it's just like the whole thing. You're like, wait, what? And it's like, yeah, it's over.
It's like they ran out of money.
Right, pretty much. Right. Like, there it is.
Yeah, that's not a bad ending either.
Right, this is where, the budget's over and this is where the movie ends. Yep. But it is funny just to have that, it's a long way of saying that, I don't know, I'd like to have the resolution take place where at least, these things can go. Because, there's other people, was it, like Shel Silverstein had his second Boy Called Sue.
Yeah.
You can always revisit stories later. There's plenty of.
Yeah, what is the one that Butch Hancock had one about? She never spoke Spanish to me.
Yeah.
And then finally he did the follow-up to that. And, she finally spoke Spanish to me, and she said goodbye. Said, adios or whatever.
See, that's smart, man. Bring that up. And like, what was it? Band The Hold Steady does that. Like, they reference characters from old songs and new songs and things like that. Like, they're very story-based driven songs. Like entire albums. This band called The Hold Steady.
I don't think I'm familiar with them.
Yeah, it's like bar rock with almost like a beat poet talk, like kind of half singing over the top. But there's all these long stories and stuff that go throughout the albums, and then like 2 albums later they'll reference characters from like the first album and songs. And
But I think like the worst example of like coming back to a story or like rehashing a story from a song would be Metallica, Unforgiven 2. It's like
there's unresolved elements that the video left a lot to
I guess so. That was a letdown.
They can't not all sequels are good, but that's why sometimes, like we're saying, it's better to tie up the ends and get on to the next adventure.
Yeah.
Again, Metallica, if you're listening, it's time.
I'm sure this is the kind of thing they get into because they got nothing else to do.
True.
Metallica.
Sometimes having too much downtime can
be a bad thing.
Right. Come back.
Absolutely. But so I ended up like playing in a lot of different bands and stuff, and I've been doing this now for, I hate to say it, but it's been almost 40 years. And career-wise, I'm not really sure I've had one other than, I played still have a hard time drawing, but I have been trying to get myself. I've been retired now, but I've been like working on some other writing, but trying to get motivated on doing a little more aggressive booking. I had I don't know what I want to talk about there, but there's a lot of, you talk about all the different kinds of scenes that are going on in Houston, and in a lot of them there's always been like within the songwriting thing, there's always been like kind of like there's gatekeepers. There are people who you kind of gotta you gotta make friends with, you gotta be working with to get some of these some of the gigs. And I just I've never been able to strategize well enough to get kind of that connection going. And sometimes it's, you know, if I'm being egotistical and bitter, I can say it's, you know, they don't like me because, you know, I don't do what everybody else is doing or something. And there may be something to that. And maybe, like, you know, I don't have some of the folk guitar chops that some of these guys have. But you know, the songwriters that I run into all seem to be really nice about the songs I write. You know, I mean, know that and I've been doing it long enough now and I've had enough positive responses from people and the kinds of real things like, this song meant this to me.
Yeah.
This did that for me. You know, and so I know that, and if you get in that, you know, the rule used to be like, if people come up to you and talk to you after a show about something, it's like probably 1 out of every 10 people who felt that is going to come up and give you that kind of response. So I know that something is going on. But it's a very weird thing to be valuing, have some pride in what I'm doing. And like I've made like several albums now. I've got, I did it with a jam band, Loki, that I used to be in, was my first one. And I did a solo album in like 2001 that came out. I did another one in 2009 with a band called Fahl Folk. And I did this graduation day that came out, the 2 songs that I mentioned. Yeah. There. And I got some recognition for the Chronicle on that. Houston Chronicle liked it. And I can listen to those still and like not be embarrassed by most of the stuff on it anyway. Right. You know? Yeah. But I haven't been able to figure out how to get the kind of next step to like the house concert bookings or the top venues. Like Matt Harlan has headed me out to the Anderson Fair thing. I've been out and done that. Doing like Hojak's thing in July. And I had a steady gig at last concert for several years. Every Sunday played out there with the band. So I'm not sure. I know I listened to some of your other podcasts too, like Charles Bryant's story, where he had the neighbor that had the venue that kind of got things that kind of got kicked off for him. But I mean, but by that time he'd already done that first album, which is, you know, to be honest, one of the few albums of some of the local guys that I've, you know, good songwriters have come out with some pretty decent records, but Charles is one of those that I will listen to again and again. Yeah. You know, that's a really fine piece of work. Yeah. And that was like, he was doing that, if I understood the story correctly, he had done that really before he'd started gigging much.
Oh yeah, he just wrote all the songs for years and then was just like, I want to record them at least. Yeah. And then then after that, just finally, I guess I'll go to an open mic and just kind of go from there.
Yeah, and we're really glad he did. I mean, I'm glad he's one of the guys that I admire in this town. His stuff. I've always been impressed by his emotional intensity. I kind of envied the fact that he could deliver something like that. I'm still kind of sideways when I'm talking, when I'm singing. You know, it's like I was watching Shannon address the other day. She's another one. It's like, you know, she's like the whole person is there, and it's like she really, you know, and she touches people. I mean, it's like every time I see her, if she's doing more than 5 or 6 songs, there's a couple of songs of hers that I've heard now 3 or 4 times in live, and along with hearing on the record, it's like, I know I'm going to cry at some point during this song. You know? Yeah. And she's going to make me do that. And she can make me laugh a lot too, but that's because that kind of openness. And I always admired that in a songwriter. Charles has that same kind of direct emotional connection that you just don't, you know. I got that Scandinavian ironic distancing thing that doesn't go over well in Texas generally, but you know.
I don't know. I mean, if you're talking song-wise, I think, like, you know, seeing a situation from a distance and observing it and writing about it is not a bad thing. But I guess distance can be tough when you're trying to, like, get into a community. And
well, if connecting emotionally with people works better than intellectually, because even the brightest, most intellectual type people are still going to respond stronger emotionally than if you're not paying attention, sometimes you don't get everything. Yeah. I keep hearing this. This is funny. It turned into a joke for me, Kerrville, again this time. I must have heard about 10 people tell me that I reminded them of James McMurtry, and a couple of people reminded me a couple of times, because you know how people who drink a lot are. They're going to tell you, they're going to tell you the same thing many times
on repeat.
But I get that, and I was thinking about that, and when I first heard that way back when he was new, I was a little kind of irritated just because, I was sure that I was some kind of unique one of a kind genius of sorts, so I couldn't possibly sound like anybody else. But if you're going to remind people of anybody, definitely he's one that I go with.
True.
That's a compliment.
And I like there's a lack of sentimentality in what he does. His stories are even the stories where there's a lot of feeling about the people that he's writing about, and then people going through real stuff. It doesn't paint it like that. You don't get any of that Hallmark card stuff with it,
right? Yeah,
and I don't like it. I don't know how these. I'm just kind of rambling here.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. We're enjoying hearing the story, man. Because it's that I think there is Murtry is a good person that's direct. Because even I don't know, like you said, it's not a flowery prose to it and things. It's like stories with the real emotion, but it's not, I think we talked about Celeste talked about distilling it down to where it's just here's what you need to know with the realism there, but without trying to put all the fancy dressings on it. It's no, here's, my favorite authors are that way. People, I don't want to read 2 pages about the dew on the leaf. I want to know what's happening and get into it and kind of fill the situation out without focusing on things that are kind of irrelevant to the story, and
so you're not a fan of the author Hawthorne?
Nah, it just depends on the person.
Hawthorne's all right,
but it is just, it reaches points where it's we're neglecting the narrative or neglecting the thing that we're interested in to just fill some page count with.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times with songs where you can tell people have an idea and they're I don't really know how to get from first to third verse or whatever. And it's here's that. I mean, with me, there's plenty of songs I can look at where I'm the second verse is the weak link, and I can tell that I was trying to make something happen there, and it's just I feel like I could have done way better.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, always the second verse is the hardest, because it's I got my intro,
right,
got my resolution.
Right. You're just trying to stretch the
how
story there.
How do we get there in a really, I guess almost economical but meaningful way, without putting too much stuff in there that kind of detracts from you want to put it in TV terms, you want to be Breaking Bad, where no episodes wasted over one of these shows where it's we need an extra season and we just fill it full of the adventures of, and it's we want to have that where no lines wasted, nothing's just done here because I don't have anything left to say, so there's a cute little stanza in there to make everyone think I'm cool.
Right.
Yeah. That's the trap. People get hung up on too. And I do this too. It's sometimes it's am I writing this song to have something to impress somebody with, or have I got a story that I really want to tell, or something that I think would be useful for people to hear.
Yeah.
I'm thinking in the certain about we wouldn't be up there doing this thing in front of people if we didn't want it.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of look at me, I'm doing this stuff,
for sure.
We would stay home and do it, but there's I kept thinking of that song, Deckhand's Daughter, song for Deckhand's Daughter, the Murtry song. I don't know if you know that one. I don't know if you ever met Danny Jones either. He's another.
Oh yeah. It's the first time I heard Matt Harley. I used to work with him at U of H.
Okay.
And he was here, check this out. And I remember playing with Matt the first time. I was is that who's that cover? I know that song. It's my song. I was oh, you're the dude. Okay.
Yeah, Danny Jones is I've run into him. He played with me a few times. I had him pick guitar with me. I always loved hanging out with him when I could. And he was the first time I heard "Song for Deckhand's Daughter," that particular song. And he always came up with. He didn't write songs if he did, there were very few. But he would come up with these songs. He'd learn these songs that if he took the time to learn the song, it was a great song.
Yeah.
And he knew a bunch of the McMurtry songs, and that Deckhand's Daughter, the one about the girl, and the whole story about the dad doesn't go into, well, I bet this made you feel sad and lonely. You didn't hear that at all, but you heard this whole story about, you understood something about the girl's parents' marriage and about what kind of a guy he was, and really how it affected that girl's life, right? And without the Hallmark card coloring around it. Mm-hmm. And it also, you get the feeling that he'd seen that. He may have known that person. He may, there was something, and it not necessarily some people that he knew really well, but it's the kind of thing that if you're an observant person, somebody who pays attention to and writes about people other than themselves and their own sad or happy things going on, and it's the kind of thing a person could see in a moment. Sometimes you see three people in a cafe talking, and you can construct a story. You can see something about what's going on with those people. And he made this really nice, this really cool story about that. And it's like it's a thing too that you get the notion that the stories that he tells, he knows something about those people. And there's a lot of, sometimes you hear people that with the best intentions in the world, they'll think of a story that might have to do something with some particular cause or something that, and they'll, like migrant workers or exploited people of one kind or another, and they don't necessarily have any kind of first-person experience, but they have the empathy for it.
Yeah.
But without any of the first-hand knowledge, and you can tell that when you hear the story, that the characters that they're talking about are not really real.
Right. Yeah.
They're
You
not
get
quite
more
real.
of a caricature version.
And it's like I get this thing about. Like if I was a Mexican dude, one of the things I would be really pissed about is all the white Texas songwriters who write songs about this beautiful Mexican girl, and it's always one from a whorehouse.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And you hear
Marty
some
Robbins?
of those guys, and you can almost listen to some of those songs, and you can bet that songwriter was never in a whorehouse in his life either. But
Right.
but they have
Right.
this beautiful love story about this
poor woman that they saved.
Yeah, and it's just like, come on, guys. And that.
No, but I agree with you. Yeah.
You see that, and it's like, I don't know. That's an example of that kind of thing that people write about.
Like one of my favorite songs is the Bottle Rockets have this song called "Smoking 100s Alone," and it came off of just Brian, their singer songwriter, was just like, we were leaving a diner and the lady behind us, and my buddy was like, "Oh, poor lady, she's smoking 100s alone," and he's like, "Cool, man," and then ended up writing this great song, and because even though he's writing it from like a female perspective, it's still like I know exactly what it's like to be at home, sad, waiting for somebody.
Yeah.
But he just kind of lays out the scenario, like here's what's happening around me. Like his clothes are in the hall. Like there's all these different things without just coming out and being like, I'm sad.
Yeah.
It's just the observations being made by the character while she's just sitting there smoking, 100s alone. It's like you get that longing, and it gives you the ability, I think, to put yourself in that person's shoes.
Yeah.
You want to have enough information to empathize and not enough to where it feels separate and you're more of a spectator. I think the best songs are the ones where you can kind of put yourself in that situation.
It's like, the Bottle Rockets, another example, $1,000 car.
Yeah.
Those guys somebody in that band owned $1,000 car.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's a real lived experience.
I bought $1,000 car about 6 months before I heard that for the first time.
Right.
And it was one of those, it's like, well, this is, as is, right? And I'm like driving home and, what's this black tape on the dash? Oh, it's covering the engine light.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
It was like,
I always love that line. Was it you sink another $1,000 and there you are, the owner of a $2,000
car. Yeah.
So it's like, there you go.
Those guys had something.
Oh yeah, Brian was a hell of a writer, but that was like, that song was always just one of those like, oh man, just it hit right. And it's that whole thing where again, it's not enough to make it that personalized. Like the song, it's a story that's personal but not personalized too much to where you can't relate to it, where you can't. Yeah. At the 7-inch sitting right there, I think it's from a Euclid in store. They did like a special
the Bottle Rockets record right there is a 45.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, Euclid Records in St. Louis did for Record Store Day each year, and they'll like have someone pretty big. It's in St. Louis, but then they'll press like a 45 of two of the live songs, and you kind of buy it on Record Store Day, and then it comes in like 2 months later.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Yeah, I still have not made an LP or a 45 single. I need to do that at some point.
Okay.
But
that's the problem. When I was a kid, those used to be the economical way, and now it costs as much as doing a full record.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's wild how much 7 inches cost now. It's like, yeah, buy my single for $10. Like, no.
Hard pass.
Yeah, well, it's like, when CDs first came out and they were more expensive and they cost like half as much to press as vinyl at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And then now the LPs are really expensive. expensive to make. But
yeah, I think a CD costs like a tenth of what a record costs.
But I saw somewhere that like fully half of the people that buy vinyl LP do not have a turntable.
Yeah,
no, yeah, I know a lot of people.
Yeah, they're doing it to support the artist and to collect them.
Well, and you just get a better version of the artwork. It's bigger.
That's
you can
true.
display it. I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I guess the last 2 albums we've done, we've put them out on vinyl. And my best friend is the guy who does the art for us, man. And his artwork deserves to be that big.
Yeah.
I think about some of the CDs I got, in the 90s when I was a kid, and it's like it'd been really cool to have that on vinyl, just because the artwork would have been really cool to have. Like especially like the Green Day album Dookie. Like that's like one of my favorite album covers.
Yeah, because it was like a Where's Waldo where you couldn't see half the characters.
Yes, dude.
That makes sense.
It's just not the same on a cassette.
It's not.
Cassette.
You're kicking it old school now.
I still got some of mine. I still got some of my cassettes. And I actually I'm finally in a position where I have a hi-fi setup at home where I can play my cassettes and my LPs.
Nice.
And my CDs.
Nice.
And get an amplifier. Now you can, and I can plug it in my phone too, or anybody else can.
Yeah.
Right.
So we can not even plug, but Wi-Fi. Yeah. So.
Well, that's like we played that in-store at Sweet Spot on Saturday, and going through their like used section of equipment, I was like, oh man, that's a nice turntable. I don't need another turntable, but that's a real nice turntable.
And I was like, ooh, that's direct drive.
I know, and I was like, you saw the same one, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
It's only $350. I can come on. Do you take payment plans?
Treat myself.
Treat yourself. You can't take the money with you when you're dead.
It's true.
What did and it's just funny how that's kind of stuck on, but I think it is because they can become art pieces. I mean, I'm sure they sell, you got frames you can put records in.
Oh, yeah.
Well, hell, we've talked about, like, we did a whole podcast over what our favorite album covers were.
Oh, yeah.
Art,
Yeah.
I think if you grew up, like, if you were alive in the 80s or the 70s, like, albums were...
Oh, yeah.
You
that was
spent
the
time
thing you
looking at
wanted.
them and
Yeah.
reading the notes. And I still have one of the ones that we have framed at the house is I had bought a Satanic Majesty's Request with that fancy 3D cover.
Ooh.
I still own that.
That's cool.
It's not collectible because there's a maze on the inside, and I think I tried to figure out the maze at some point.
Yes.
That's all marked up. But,
Been there.
Therefore.
Like, oh, you actually used this thing? Like, yeah.
It's not like the 40-year-old virgin where you have everything in the box.
It's not worth it anymore.
No.
I watched what...
Once you take it out of the wrapper, it greatly loses its value.
I was watching an interview with Seth Green one night where he was talking about his wife, someone gave him like a Kiss doll, like collectible, and he's like, oh, I opened it and started playing. He's like, what are you gonna do? He's like, honey, we're ever at the point where it's like, oh God, we got to sell the Kiss figure. It's like, we got bigger problems.
We made some bad decisions.
Like we things are really bad. I don't think it's gonna matter that much.
Nope.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I can relate to that.
people buy 2 copies of a comic, one to read and one to keep in the...
Yes.
I know. I remember that I had learned the hard way. I had some comic book collector dude jump me when I was a kid because we cut out the thing in the back to mail into orders. Like, you just photocop, you ruined it.
Yeah, well, no, I used it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've got...
That's what it's for.
Yeah, I was like, this is how old I am. When I was like 2nd, 3rd grade, and I had like the 25 cents a week allowance. That was like 2 comic books and a candy bar.
Yeah.
Nice.
What kind of candy bar?
3 Musketeers.
Solid choice.
Yeah, I'm not so fond of them now. They're too sweet, but that's...
Yeah. Everything's so sweet now.
I also feel like the Three Musketeers is the wrong name for that candy bar.
There's only 2 things.
There's only 2 ingredients, nougat and chocolate.
There used to be 3. The original 3 Musketeers had like 3 sections or something. And this is before my time even.
Okay.
But I do remember, I don't know. If you look it up at 3, I look it up in Wikipedia, I'll probably be wrong.
Maybe it was like a Neapolitan thing in the beginning. And
I don't know, man, but I feel like they should change the name. It doesn't have 3 ingredients.
No, because then everyone knows what it is, though. And it's one of those unsung heroes. It's just like, it's nougat, chocolate.
But see, I think the Milky Way should be the Three Musketeer. It has caramel, nougat, and chocolate.
But the caramel's the milk part.
I'm just saying, if we're going by the name itself, it makes more sense to be Three Musketeers.
I don't know.
I digress.
Yeah, this
We
is
did.
interesting. But like, am I supposed to
Right.
talk about me? I don't know.
No, we digress all the time.
good. Yeah,
Actually.
that's
We should change this podcast to
That's what we're trying to
tangents.
make people. We're trying to make people
I
think.
like it.
digressions, yes.
And that's one of them.
Some of my favorite writers are awesome with digressions.
Well, there's a way I can tie this back in too, because just like candy bars now, they replace all the substance with sugar. And,
Ooh, nice.
That can be a bad issue when it comes to music.
Exactly.
Like we were talking about, too much sugar and not enough substance that makes the song good. Which
And we're back on
James
track.
Murtry's a good guy who just gives you the cocoa powder and stuff and doesn't replace it all with sugar. You get the real deal
No
thing.
shit. What was the thing? Something I had in my head I was thinking about that I wanted to make sure I threw out. So you've heard, so there's this old expression, and I don't know where it came from originally, but I've heard it talked about, some people apply it to like ministers is one of the things, and also just anybody who's doing any kind of art. And that is that your mission is to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable.
Yeah.
And which is, kind of nice. But there's a lot of, when we talk about like the Hallmark card thing, that people, it's like if you really wanted to be successful, if you wanted to make a lot of money and get a lot, what you really want to do is comfort the comfortable.
Right.
For one
Dumb it
thing,
down a little
they got
bit.
money to buy your stuff.
Right.
And, if you keep them happy,
Make it palatable for everybody, and it'll sell to more people.
Yeah. And that's, I think, where a lot of people go. And I really try not to do that. And then there's the disturbed too. I don't know how that works.
Right.
Oh, that's an accomplishment.
Those bands are out there, man.
They are out there.
Yeah.
They're called juggalos.
Whoa. We are not anti-juggalo,
No, we're
Juggalette.
not. I'm just making a joke
Is
about
that
the
is that a
disturbed.
fear reflex there?
Oh, you know it is.
Disturbed, disturbing the disturbed. It's like, yeah, that's it right there.
We are not poking any bears today.
Yeah,
No.
My wife's daughter is a fan.
I have a CD or two of
No, I'm not even
ICP in my
talking
collection.
bad. I'm just saying that's a point where you have people kind of perpetuating.
A good friend of mine does have a Juggalo tattoo.
Oh, we got good friends of ours that are like go to the thing every year. But,
Oh, The Gathering?
yeah. But anyway, enough about that. The point was we were just trying to say disturbed and. But I think it does, and most scenes you look at, the people who cross over to popularity are normally the most, even if it's great music, like they're the least spectacular bands out of there, like at least the least weird, like the ones that really kind of pushed the envelope and tried different things were normally the bands that were like, yeah, we can't really sell this that well. But the one over here that sounds like,
Well, yeah, it's like, what was it? Like Slipknot, they got big doing their whole shtick, but there were bands that have been doing the same thing and doing it better for years before them, but they just were the more palatable,
Well, and they were the ones who were willing to sell.
Yeah.
Well, you even go back to a lot of you can go all the way back to like 50s rock and stuff like that. Like usually people who were trying a lot of cool things, like Link Ray throwing down all this crazy guitar stuff. He had like the one song, but he was mostly like banned in places because a little too disturbing the peace and things like that.
Too rowdy.
Yeah.
You had safer people who were kind of rockabilly bands that kind of blew up way bigger. I mean, it was usually the people who were less threatening.
More
Well,
generic.
all the Pat Boone
yeah.
covers of the Little Richard and
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, and Ricky Nelson for that matter.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That stuff as a kid. I mean, but it's that's how it goes, and it's some of the times you get people who are doing that are actually doing some really good stuff too.
Yeah. Oh no, there are always exceptions to the rules, but it's always fun to find like a band that you dig in like a certain genre, or a certain time or scene, and then start digging through all the ones that didn't burst through the top. And you're like, man, that was really interesting.
Right.
They were doing stuff like 15 years before we would have expected this to be done.
Yeah.
I start being, I wonder if these people heard this record because there's this popular.
But I think that's like an Easter egg for people that are fans of music. Like people like us are like going to hear that popular version and then start doing the mining to find the good stuff. Like that's the reward for people like us.
Yeah,
we can find it.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that I found really, really hard when I started doing music. Because like I was already in my mid-30s by then, right? And so for most people, things I've learned, most people are really passionate about music in their teens, late teens through early 20s. And for most of their life after that, what music means to them is the stuff that they dug at that time in their life.
Yeah.
And the stuff that they like, the new stuff that they like is stuff that sounds like that, which is kind of why you get all of the rock bands that kind of go into country as they age, partly because they can find the work and they no longer relate to the teenagers themselves, and they've got kind of a built-in fan base that knows them and is comfortable with the way that they sound. And that's been going on since at least Conway Twitty, which was early 60s when he went from country to rock.
Yeah.
So that's like a tradition in is rock stars becoming country stars.
Yeah.
The guy from Hootie. I mean, he's
Whose name is
Darius
not
Rucker.
Hootie, by the way.
Yeah, Darius Rucker.
Darius Rucker.
Yeah, but I mean, and there's always some country music purists who get indignant about it. But
Yes.
it's like, hey, this is part of the country music tradition. As is, complaining about the country music today doesn't sound like real country music.
Right, exactly.
Again, that's something else that people have been saying since they didn't want drums at the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
Since the first time Hank Williams showed up to Grand Ole Opry,
Yep.
they didn't want to have him. So that's like, I don't know, that's my
Usually by
country
your
music
mid 20s though, like
mark,
basically like, you know, not even just country, but you know, stuff my grandma made me listen to. I was like, oh, this is grandma music. Then I reached an age where I was like, man, grandma has some pretty good
She has some
records.
jams.
You know, it's kind of the, what was it, the drive-by truckers, that thing. And it was like, I grew up like hating or, you know, rebelling against like Leonard Skinner and the whole Southern rock thing. And then once I got in my 20s, I was like, you know what, man, there was some really cool stuff in there. And I liked
I
that.
thought they sounded like them.
And they do. That's what's
Yeah,
funny.
I
Where he
always
was talking
thought
about
they
when he
did,
was a
but
kid. It was like,
yeah.
I went and saw Black Flag and I did this. And all of a sudden it's like, well, actually, man,
This country thing's not so bad.
yeah, it's not that bad. Because he used to be like, you can't listen to any of that. If you listen to like the punk rock music, you can only listen to that. You can't. I don't know. I always had a hard time. Like, but I like this other
I
stuff.
like
too.
everything.
That
Yeah.
grandpa music remark, you made something like that. I was thinking about that back when I was hanging out with Pops Overstreet playing. So he lived over on right near Dallas and Shepherd, and there's just some row houses there. I don't know what's there anymore, but he lived in one of those. But so his neighbors and who lived, the younger neighbors, they were all listening to rap, and which was natural at that time. I mean, that's what you're into. But it was what Pops was doing, which seemed so cool to all of the people who'd never run into it before. All of the college kids that would show up at like local charm where we'd play, whatever. But it was grandpa music as far as all of the black community was concerned.
Yeah.
You know, those kids weren't particularly interested in any of that old blues at all. Yeah, it was the same deal. It's like it's something that seems exotic and cool and new. You know, somebody is like, you know, they got some old relatives doing the same old crap that they.
Right. Like that's what my family does when they get together, guys. We can go listen at their house if you'd like.
But so much of country is based in blues. So much of rock and roll is based in blues music.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah. Oh, and then
It's
backwards.
just all this. Yeah.
Howlin' Wolf's woo woo he got from Jimmy Rogers. That's his version of the Jimmy Rogers yodel.
That's great.
Yeah, I think so many people, that's always been my thing recently. Everyone's so trying to be like, who started? It's like, man, everyone was borrowing from everybody.
Yeah.
If you really loved music, people were showing up where like good music was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like, you know, listening to records from whoever, like, you know, it's kind of cool. That's like the one place, even as far back as like the 20s and 30s, where, you know, you picked up a record, you know who was on it, you know what people look like. You just put it on, it was like, all right, I feel this, or you don't.
Yeah.
But Pops used to talk about when he lived in West Virginia that early in the mornings that hillbillies used to get up and play music, banjo pickers and stuff, literally on the hill across the valley. And he'd get up in the morning and he'd listen to those guys, you know, doing all of their whatever they were doing, the local music. But part of the thing I got distracted from a while back talking about the people that, you know, for most people the music that they were into is whatever they were into when they were kids. And the thing that really kind of hurt when I finally figured it out as a musician going in, trying to start in the middle age, right? I mean, for one thing, I couldnn't get my buddies out because people weren't coming out to hear me play because they had to go home and take care of the kids, right?
Right.
You know, when they lived out in the suburbs, you know, you weren't going to come out at 9 o'clock at night because they had to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you know. But most people really don't care that much about music.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as, you know, as you or I do, or even
Right.
and even the people that come out to hear us. It's for somebody who is like, this is the center of existence, music and even poetry, the other thing too, which is even, you know, less interesting to most people. It's just one of the joys that I found about coming out and starting to make music and play music is the fact that I was actually getting to spend time around people who cared about it as much as I did and who were as interested in it.
Yeah.
You know, and even who had the energy to argue about it.
Right.
You know, as opposed to, yeah, I have to screw that. I don't like those guys. Whatever the thing is. And I don't know how that's relevant to anything that we're talking about.
Oh no,
But
I
there's
totally agree. Like I don't know if I've ever told this story on the podcast before, but like when I met Sam, I was very musical when I was younger and was around a lot of people who did singing and playing and even some like songwriting. But when I moved to Houston, I was like late 20s, and all that connection just stopped. And I didn't know anyone here who loved music. And when I met Sam, I'd been here probably 15 years or so. And all my friends that were here were like, who are you? Like, you've changed so much. Like, you're so into this music thing. Like, maybe you should like give it up a little bit. Like, he's not that great. You don't have to go overboard, you know, on the music thing just to
impress him.
land this guy. Right. And I'm like, you don't know me, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, like I have connected more with the musicians that I've met since Sam and I have been together than like most people that I knew knew for 15 years. Like, we just have the same interests. We have the same goals. I definitely think that
Kind of communicate emotionally the same
having
way.
that community is,
I get that. I get that completely because I was, like I said, I was doing the people I knew in Texas were the people I knew from work and my neighbors, and we were living out in like West Houston, and it was people could have like 4-hour conversations about lawn care, and I was like, I mean, literally, and the people or sports. I could get into talk about sports. I mean, I'm not a snob about that, but the stuff that I really cared about in life, I didn't know anybody who was into it at all, and until I started hanging out with music and hanging out with other musicians, and even and like I know people from over the years that hung out with like locals from who were into jazz, the punk rockers. Got to jam with the Rusted Shut guys once.
Oh, right, yeah.
At a thing, which is like my daughter thought I was cool for that. And it's just when she was still a teenager, so stuff like that. But the punk rockers and the blues people and there's not that much communication sometimes between those groups.
Yeah.
But I've had a chance to meet them, but they all give a shit about the music, and they are, and the most people who are into music are a little more open about listening to people in other genres.
yes.
And it's the other thing is that you usually find you might be talking to some bluegrass guy and find out that he used to be in a heavy metal band,
Right.
or you're talking to somebody somebody that's playing jazz and they maybe make their money playing bass in a country band, but they their first love is jazz thing. I mean, there was a steel guitar player a while back that was like Jimmy Alcorn, and he had like a jazz band, that was like a really experimental, amazing stuff. And he had like a standing gig at Pearl's Cotton Club every Monday night, and you'd hear the weirdest steel guitar jazz band stuff ever. And he made his living playing in country bands.
Yeah.
And then he became Susan Alcorn and moved to Washington D.C. and still doing the jazz stuff. But I mean, you don't get to meet those kind of people going to work at the natural gas company and talk.
No.
Yeah.
And maybe not even in your family. Like my parents were a little musical, but my younger brother, it's background for him.
Yeah.
He could not tell you what artist is playing on the radio, even though he listens to the same radio station and they play the same songs every day.
Yeah.
He just doesn't pay attention. And like, I find that connecting with musicians like that it's like, oh, I found someone who like loves what I love, and it's awesome. I've found that even more so with songwriters too, because I like you, I wrote poetry growing up, and it was a really easy transition.
It is, yeah. And it's I also, one of the things that I'd done once I started doing the music thing, I was thinking, well, if the music doesn't pan out, I'm going to take real good notes. Like, so I started journaling. I talk about stuff that maybe I can come up with something, stories about the stuff. But I've been in the last few years, I started actually transcribing those from those handwritten journals, trying to get into Word documents and find, so I at some point be able to digest them, turn them into stories or whatever. But sometime early 80s, just before I actually started in the music, there was like there are people like me out there.
Yeah.
My people are out there. I'm going to find them.
Right.
And luckily I did. The other thing that's really weird about it is that, without being all hippy dippy, one of the things I've noticed about the music folks, you hear people say, I love you.
Yeah.
Yes,
And mean
that's
it.
true.
And it's not like, we're going to go off together and marry, or we're going to be together every day for the rest of our lives, or even see each other again ever. But we've had a moment around this music that is the same. That's we've been able to connect. We share something, and you don't do that again at the natural gas company.
Yeah.
No, if you say I love you to Tim in finance, you're going to be in an HR meeting the next hour.
Yeah, well, or even people that coworkers that I like a lot. We share a lot of stuff with, and sometimes working on a project together, you have there are challenges that are met together. There are things that are done, and you spend some time together, and there's you really strong, deep affection. But on the other hand, it's been a year and a half since I left my last job, and I don't think I've had more than 2 conversations with any of my ex-coworkers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing of like you have these experiences due to proximity versus
Actual wanting
like
to be
due
there.
to like an emotional thing too.
connection
Yeah, because I
or
think
community.
artistically you have things where you're more vulnerable. It's these like experiences that mean something. And normally if you sharing it with other people, you're like, hey, we just had this thing, So there's people we see like once a year, if not once every few years, and as soon as you see them, it's just that like we've got this kinship with each other, and it's the coolest thing. It's like
Just pick right back
Well,
up.
yeah, there was a connect. I mean, we met twice before, right? But I mean, even like the second time you guys showed up and you changed the seating so I could hear Kim, But that was a reunion already, even though we'd barely communicated at that point. And obviously this conversation, is some real shit. I'd never met him before.
You're not missing out much. It's fine.
Well, and that's what's we like about doing this is you get to meet people, and A, we get to help promote people we dig, and B, we get to have a conversation, learn stuff about people. So when we see people in the future, it kind of kills some of that awkwardness of like, hey,
we met before a long time ago.
You may not remember us. But.
I don't know if you guys hang out. Have you been to the Kerrville Folk Festival? Have you spent much time out there at all?
No, I've never had a job that I was able to be like, hey, it's May, I'm going to take off. It was always during finals at the university.
Oh yeah.
I
got that. But I like I said, just getting back from there, and it's just. So I started. The first one I went to was like '94.
Oh wow!
And it was one of those things where people started telling me that in the mid '80s. I'm not going to go about fight. That's just mainly because I didn't want to do anything anybody told me to do. That's.
I think that's
part of why I'm a folk singer in the first place, probably. But there really is. There's that kind of people connection, and there's people who there are people who sang a song I heard once in the middle of the night that song sticks in my head, or made some kind of an impression on me. But there's also it's out there. You keep running into people, and it's like, I know you. I know I've heard you do this. I cannot for the life of me remember your name, or people that you've talked together with, or you've sat in a circle with, and like for several evenings in a row, and heard each other's songs, and played with each other on each other's song stuff. And it's like, Joe, Matt, John, Jimmy, and I know it starts with a J. I mean, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's like, that doesn't deny the fact that you know each other.
Yeah.
And you have some connection already. And there's a lot of that going on.
Super cool.
But, and there's a lot of like hot. It's really too hot. And there's the last couple of times I've been volunteering on these courtesy carts, so I get to drive around and, hey, you want to ride? Well, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Thank God.
Thank God. Yeah, people get tired of walking. It's like, and I figured out the formula too. Being famous is if more people know who you are than you know, right? I mean, that's kind of the thing. So I go out to this Kerrville thing and drive in the carts and everything, and I meet all of these people and I've met all these names. If I forget all their names, I'll be more famous than them.
There you go.
True that.
It was like, that's the cart guy.
Dude, he's the real MVP, cart man.
It's like one of those things where you're like, of all things to be well known for. Like.
But yeah. But it's kind of fun. Then this time there's like moments. There's this. I met these two kids from Wimberley, and I got the names wrong the first weekend I was out there. Ran into me in the third weekend, got the names right. It's Carson and Charlotte. Carson and Weemet. They're like, they said they were 21, but we're not sure if we believe that. But the kids
21 when they got that beer
amazing guitar player, and it was like, so we were doing like a song circle thing, and he was sitting in, and I kept trying to come up with, well, let's see if he can handle this, if he can, different kinds of songs that I do, and everything was just fucking amazing. And then they did a song that they'd written together, and it was like the song was about trying to write a song that's going to change something. So I don't know if this song is going to mean anything. I think it's something like that, but to paraphrase.
Yeah.
Because I only heard the song once, right? But and just to know that there are people that age that are out there that care, that are putting the kind of time into it to make that happen. I heard there was a bluegrass band, 3 17-year-old kids from Nashville who were there. The mandolin player's mother was like kind of with them, taking care of them. But the mandolin player, they're trying to decide what song they were going to do next, and the mandolin player's noodling around, and I hear a couple of phrases from Take 5, the Dave Brubeck thing.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, do you guys know that? And I says, yeah. This is when the guitar player says, well, I can't quite remember the chords in the B part, so the mandolin player told him. And the guy who'd been playing the dobro, he pulled out a melodica for that song. Wow. And the three of them did this like rendition of Take 5.
Wow.
In the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm hearing 3 17-year-old kids with the chops to carry that off.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I'm like, I've been telling this story probably too many times already, but it's like, that's the kind of thing to go to the festival for. I mean, it's just.
That is super cool.
Yeah. And you hear a lot of songs that I heard one song 30 years ago that I still haven't been able to track down anywhere about a mailman named Dave and how all of the kids in the town were named Dave. and there was a chorus about Dave and Dave and Dave and Dave and Dave and Dave and Dave. I heard this like at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning one of the first years that I was out there, which a lot of people do the same thing when they're out there first. It's like they don't sleep. It's like, oh my God, there's music all the time. And,
Right.
And I can smoke all the pot I want. And I can keep drinking. And I don't have to sleep for 4 or 5 days. And it's only 90 degrees. And if I get to the river for a half an hour sometime during the day, I'll cool off it. It's like that. So after about 4 days, you don't know what the heck's going on. So I heard that song in the middle of that. But
Goodness.
Oh, it's always been the stories I heard. It's like for 2 weeks, then like it carries, people travel around afterwards. It carries on for another week because everyone leaving Kerrville's heading, we're going to go play in Austin. And then we're going to go do this. And
oh yeah, folks that do that. I mean,
yeah, it's like 3 weeks later, you're sort of like, oh, I'm back.
I'm finally home.
yeah. So anybody who's thinking about going out there the first time, sleep. Take a nap during the day. Go to bed at night.
Take David's advice.
Yeah.
You'll miss the killer 70-year-olds.
And if you're really a pervert, you won't listen to anything anybody tells you about how to do something.
Right? That's perfect. Well, all right, we're crawling past the hour mark, so this is where we're going to start winding it down.
Okay.
Gave you warning. We've been doing it. I've been
I was
an
gonna
adult
ask.
recently and been giving people like a warning. So our season question came from our friends in Rock Bottom String Band, but it's give us one book, one podcast. That's not ours. We have to add that in. So everyone just cops out. Like, oh, I love you. But and then if you don't listen, that's fine. And then one musical artist or album that people should check out that may not know about. So kick it to you.
Okay. Yeah, so podcast Democracy Now! I'm not a big podcast guy, but that's something that people need to keep listening, especially now.
That's a
Yeah.
good one.
And book, I want to cheat, and I want to say a writer, and I'm going to say anything by Kurt Vonnegut. And if you've read some Kurt Vonnegut, read some more. All of his stuff, I ran into him in like high school, college, and when he had his first, like Mr. Rosewater, and those things were coming out. And I think and then when Slaughterhouse 5, of course, is a major piece, but all of his books since then are all also worthwhile. I keep finding new ones that I hadn't heard of, and I hear people talking about him. But that guy is. I've been in a recent long conversation with some people about this guy recently, and the fact that he's funny and his books are short and his sentences are short. I think he gets a little discounted in the literary community, but he's probably out of the people who are writing in the U.S. in the last half of the 20th century. He's probably the most likely that we're going to be still reading 100 years from now. I think there's stuff that he had to say that really needs to be heard.
All right. It's
So I'll do
the
that,
second one this year. We got now a Canadian who told us we need to read more Vonnegut, now an American. So we're good.
Okay, yeah. Now he's I haven't come across a loser book from him yet. And then
Good to know.
podcast. What was the other one? Oh,
Music.
one. There's a song called Plowshare Prayer by Joelle Spence, I think is the name right. I hate to say I'll look it up. But this is one of those, a lot of people have heard this song. I heard this actually the first time at Kerrville a year ago. And it was kind of embarrassing. I was up at the Crow's Nest is one of the campfires that's has been going for a long time. And a lot of people who... So anyway, I was up there and I heard this song called Plowshare Prayer, and I heard there was this young woman, they're trans, but singing this song in this beautiful soprano voice, and I had never heard it or heard of her or met her before, and I was like, jaw dropping, and I had to ask her who she was and who they were, and they actually opened the next night at the festival.
Nice.
Oh, cool.
Their act and did this particular song among their act, and they also used like a looper, like the old Ed Sheeran thing, only for vocals, and built this massive choirish harmonic things going on.
Oh, wow.
With these songs, it just meant they were all like really intelligent and really meaningful and really powerful emotionally. And the other people have done recordings of it that you can find, but this song needs to be heard. I've done it a couple times myself. I haven't memorized it, which I should be slapped for.
Oh, you
the
play
lyrics.
it sometimes?
I have done, and it's nice because it's actually Spencer LaJoy is the name of the artist.
Okay.
LaJoy is LaJoye, and it's
Plowshare Prayer.
Plowshare Prayer.
Okay.
And it's musically it's really simple. It's like a 3-chord job, but it's like a 4-line verse that gets repeated many times. So it's easy to learn to play, and it's a prayer that needs to be sung and heard.
That's cool.
So that's the one I'm going to recommend.
Nah, this has been my favorite answer this season so far because
I
no
was
one's
gonna
really
say,
called out
yeah.
an exact, like, really cool song. on.
Yeah, no one's distilled it down to a song before.
Well, I forgot to think about that one ahead of time, but
it worked out.
It was nice to me because I saw them at the festival in spring last year, and then in October I was out for the Welcome Home Fest, and I did it in a song circle there because I wanted everybody in the world to hear the song. I was into that, even though I can't find any way to include it in my act in any of the places that I do, but for there I was. And one of the people that I played it for was a young girl who she works out there now at the festival, but she was hanging out with another woman that we knew, and her name is Lauren. She's also pretty good songwriter. And I was gratified at this last festival, one of the last nights, ran into her again, said hello, and we kind of caught up a little bit. I mean, she's, it's not like we're buds, but, we acquainted. And she walked away, and a couple seconds later, she comes running up to me and says, "I want to thank you for telling me about that song, about the Plowshare Approach." She says, "I've learned it," and it's like, one of my next goals is I want to hear her sing that one, when I get a chance to run into her again.
Heck yeah.
Oh, that's rad.
And it's one of my poet friends, Kelly Ellis, who is like really active in the poetry community here in town, and is a really good poet herself too. She heard that, and she's also like, this song is getting, and when I sang it at Houston Song Circle one time, it was the people like Bud Beerhouse had actually hung out with Spencer, knew the song, and Jim Gills knew the song. I mean, people, it hit some nerves.
Nice.
Right on.
Yeah,
I'll have to check that out.
Well, all right, man. Well, after that, is there anything we missed that you'd like to add real quick?
No, except I hope people. My name is spelled Fahl, and there's a davidfahl.com that if you go to, you can find on the music. You can get links to hear my stuff free on all of the YouTube things that CD Baby puts it out on.
Right on.
There's stuff under my name, there's stuff under Fahl Folk, and there's stuff under a band called LOKY. Actually, there's a few bands out there called LOKY, but Loki.
You link those on your website, though, right?
Yeah, and there's links to all of that stuff on the website, and there's also a place you can get on my email list from that, and I'll let you know where I'm going to be playing and what else is coming out.
Awesome.
Right on. All right. Well, thanks for coming and talk to us.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's fun to get a chance to talk about this stuff. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, we had a blast, man. All right, Kim.
Bye, y'all.
All right, y'all, that does it for another episode of Music in the Minor League. We hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed getting to hear about David Fahl. We're looking forward to catching him at some gigs coming up, getting to see the full show, man. That July 17th show with Opie Hendrix is really just looking back at us from the calendar. So I think we're going to try to make it out to that one. As always, if you like the podcast, share it with some friends. If you want to be on the podcast, hit us up. Do our best to schedule you in. And with that, it'd be good to mention that we're probably going to take July off from the podcast just we're going to be doing so much touring and things like that. We may have one episode in there. We're not sure. But as of now, we're planning to take the month off unless something changes. All right, y'all, let's listen to another track from David's Graduation Day record. This one's called Reptile Love, and we'll see you next time. Later.
Science magazine. It's a place where the path of evolution can be seen. You got them big old frontal lobes that make you human and unique. It's where you get the stuff to watch TV, try to speak. Got a cerebellum under, like every mammal's head. Learns your habits and your emotions, chases down your daily bread. In common with the bottom of the vertebrate tree is your medulla oblongata. That's a fascinating me. Come on, baby, give me your reptile love. I got no interest in any of the stuff above. Wiggle, wiggle like a snake, wave a tail like a lizard do. Meet me at the bottom of your brain, baby, I love you. Your lizard brain remembers everything a dinosaur did. We're not talking super ego here, you know. We're barely talking it. We're chasing ancient memories found where the filter gone. We'll make a direct connection and we'll put all that other stuff on. exciting to the waking mind. I'm after something elemental here, I know that you'd agree. If you would be inclined to let your reptile mind set you free. Come on, baby, give me your reptile love. I got no interest in any of the stuff above. We gon' wiggle like a snake, wave a tail like a lizard do. Meet me at the bottom of your brain, baby, I love you. Come on, baby, give me your reptile love. I got no interest in any of this stuff, bub. We gon' wiggle like a snake, wave our tail like a lizard do. Meet me at the bottom of your brain, baby, I love you. Come on, baby. Give me your reptile love. Give me that reptile. A little bitty